All right, listen here, soldier. We're going down into the trenches.
There seems to be a movie about World War II produced every 3 months with a backlog of classics to boot. Some are more overt than others, such as Hacksaw Ridge, Saving Private Ryan, and The Boy in the Striped Pajamas, while others simply use World War II as a touchstone or backdrop for their stories, such as Raiders of the Lost Ark, Life is Beautiful, and Casablanca. In American culture, World War II has more or less become the binding of our collective understanding of where we as a society are. And this has been reflected in our myth-making, being that some of the most profitable franchises such as Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, and Harry Potter all take cues from the historic events. In these stories, a lowly common boy is tasked with greatness and to go out into the cold and unknowing future to defeat an almighty evil, much like the drafted soldiers of yesteryear. Surrounded by a world and foreign beings they'll never fully understand, overcome the odds and fulfill a destiny they'll never know they were part of. A story I'm sure every soldier from that time can appreciate, but have never claimed for themselves. We, as members of a society these heroes sacrificed for, have become our ancestors' greatest dream, and the thought of World War II has become the all-collecting myth of our countries and allied forces, America, Russia, and the UK. These stories have continued in many such works such as Captain America, X-Men, and Harry Potter. Take Voldemort, for example. His drive to make a pure bloodline and eliminate anyone who's deemed inferior is basically the same thing as what was going on in World War II. Even if it has a different coat of paint, the main idea is present. What's up? It's me, your boy. Like, comment, subscribe. The thing that has consumed storytelling from a global perspective is World War II. Only because as an event, that is the thing that has affected the globe. So of course there's going to be stories made about it. The thing is, it hasn't always necessarily been the case. Before World War II, when movies were made, granted this was over 80 years ago, the Civil War was like the big thing that people talked about. Like, for example, the very first movie ever made was Birth of a Nation, which was more or less glorifying a now known terrorist organization. They have an affinity for pointy white hoods. I'm not going to say who they are, but they derive their name from the sound a gun makes. Ku Klux. Learned that from a Sherlock Holmes book.
The way was opened up for folks with bravery. There were plenty of fights to win land rights, but the West was meant to be. It was a manifest destiny.
In the 19th century, there was the American concept of manifest destiny, where the nation was encouraged to grow, which of course impregnated the minds of Americans to the glorious splendor of expansion. A sense of adventure and a God-given duty was bestowed upon its citizens, which possibly hasn't gone away. America, at its core, is the purest distillation of adventure that could be, being that most of its inhabitants are derived from immigrants with the borderline sociopathic desire to leave their homeland and everyone they've ever loved in the hopes of a better future. America, as a nation, is a relatively recent one, and whereas most other nations have a rich and seasoned tapestry of lore to explore, the Stars and Stripes are void of Olympus, world serpents, and thunderbirds. As a country, we've assimilated the concept of our war efforts into the place of our creationist myth. You'd be hard-pressed to find a lover of America who doesn't also have an interest in the Revolutionary War, Civil War, or World War II. These elements of World War II have also crept into the writer's shorthand. What makes the reader believe the villain is evil faster than them either being a Nazi or something resembling it? And although the trope can come off as a little tired, there are times when the Nazi ideology as a method of villainy works without being a slog. For example, during Bring Your Kid to Work Day, Darth Vader, who only wanted to impress his boss, quits in the most dramatic fashion, leaving audiences with something to cherish for years. On the other hand, Voldemort, name an equally iconic scene. I'll wait. Now, in terms of influential movies, obviously World War II hasn't always been the staple. At a certain point, before Germany invaded Poland, the Civil War was the epicenter of American discussion, with stories such as Birth of a Nation, The General, and Gone with the Wind all having highly praised and notorious installments to the American tale. As a side note, all of which having a severe to slight Confederate tilt to them. I can't stand Gone with the Wind. I think it's I don't understand that movie's appeal. The story, it's about like this, she's like just like a rich girl from the South, and the Civil War like destroys her family and legacy, or family's legacy, and she's just I don't identify with this character. I think she's just kind of a useless whiny brat. There's not many redeeming qualities for it's kind of like Mad Men. The problems that those people have in that show are just like so far removed from anything that I'll ever understand. They're just like, huh, my wife's a It's like, why? And it's like, she's just annoying. And it's like, okay. Isn't it crazy that I make a livable wage? I'm like, F you. Like, I hate this show. Yeah, and they try to go this, like, existential route where it's just like, oh, what is it to be alive? And it's just like, one, those people at that time 100% were not thinking about that. Two, like, if you have those questions, read a book. I highly doubt Don Draper has ever read a book. I'm not even convinced Don Draper can read. If any normal person were to interact with Don Draper, like if you were in an elevator with Don Draper, do you think you would be his friend? No, he would call you poor. He would call you poor as you got out of the elevator. And then he would go cheat on his wife and talk about like existentialism to somebody who like just doesn't know about it. Oh my God, I forgot we're supposed to be talking about World War II. Oh God. Speaking of all this war, ever notice how these particular events in American history are roughly 80 years apart from one another? We're a coincidence, I know. And that's all it is, a coincidence. But if you were to ask William Strauss and Neil Howe, they devised a psychohistorical concept aptly titled the generational theory. In it, they essentially state that crises happen in 80-year cycles, and roughly 4 generations apart. The explanation being that the eldest generation who suffered the mistakes of the past are either no longer with us, or too small in numbers and physically weak to make their voices heard, with the potential of repeating history. It said, strong men make easy times make weak men make hard times make strong men. But that doesn't have to be where this story ends. There's a reason we continuously return to these tales and why the common trope of villainy continues. If we use these stories to inform others, learn from history, and use this knowledge to inform our decisions, the good people of the world can persevere. If not, I think Space Jam is streaming. I think that, like, in 80-year intervals, America comes up with its own creationist myth. America had its Civil War in 1776, and that was the creationist myth of the country. So then, 80 years roughly pass from 1776 to 1861 is when the Civil War happened. After the Civil War, the states were more federalized and united, because up to that point, states were basically seen as countries themselves, which eventually like fed into the federalist system. But the Civil War was a blanket, no slaves for everyone. We had to go through hardship in order to like get everyone on the same page. Also, the Civil War wasn't recognized until like about 2 years into it. Then another 80 years after that, World War II happens, which like, if you see America, which is a bunch of different countries coming together and forming the United States, then you have the Civil War, which collectivized all the states and said, well, this is who we are. Then World War II happens, which is basically like, okay, America now on the global stage is the guy. We are the strongest military force on the planet. And I'm sure there's other people out there who's like going to say like, oh, no, it's Russia. No, it's China. It's like, it's America.
Let me tell you something. If the U.S. government decides to stick a tracking device up your ass, you say thank you, and God bless America.
So I think each of these things, each of these wars essentially take the place of the creationist myth. And as it is kind of currently, it's been 80 years since World War II. So we're due. World War II more or less has shaped our understanding of where the American place is. So like, for example, Star Wars is very much a World War II backdrop. Luke Skywalker fights literal stormtroopers. The Empire is like a totalitarian regime. Even when Han Solo goes into light speed, the cockpit resembles like a World War II fighter pilot. Like these are just like very obvious things. Harry Potter, like Voldemort, is very akin to a certain mustache man.
It is Miss Burbage's belief that Muggles are not so different from us.
There is a brief window where the Civil War, which is what like a majority of American movies were based off of. Eventually it's going to become something else. Like, you know, I'm assuming whatever is happening right now, whether it become World War III or the Civil War Part 2, Electric Boogaloo, you know, we'll make movies about that. And obviously I think there's some movies that are already kind of doing that, like One Battle After Another. Like that movie, it was a victim of its time because there was a lot of violence in the streets when it came out, but like that is a fantastic film.
God damn it! Viva la revolution!
I guess my thesis here is that there is a world event that happens, and then every country more or less is going to talk about it. 1776, I don't know how often other countries were... I'm sure other countries were curious about America, because they were like, hold on. You're telling me a bunch of farmers defeated the world's greatest military? Yes. And they're saying they're a country now? Yeah, That sounds like anarchy, because up to that point, it's been a feudalist system.
Are we the baddies?
Are you a writer in need of a quick villain and need something to give your story a little extra, punch? Introducing Insta-tagonist. All you need to do is add water, put water on a stove, and add your Insta-tagonist. Insta-tagonist from the Low-Hanging Fruit Company. Testimonials from Insta-tagonists include Red Skull, Voldemort, Hans Landa, Darth Vader, Magneto, the bad guys from Hellboy, the bad guys from Indiana Jones, and much, much more. Flavors of Insta-tagonists include totalitarian ideology, interest in eugenics or purity of bloodline, over-importance of iconic fashion, and lemon. Which one's your favorite? Tell me in the comments below. What's your favorite movie about World War II as a World War II backdrop? It doesn't have to be like, you know, The Inglourious Basterds or whatever, even though it's a great movie. Like, what's your favorite World War II movie? Final thoughts? Movies can save us. But you gotta learn and keep your big, dumb, stupid ears open. Like, comment, and subscribe for more content. Link in bio.